Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Human SOS Show, episode 108. We are rocking along, and we're going to be talking about dieting today. I'll let Antron introduce in just a moment. Just want to remind everyone to be sure, let us know where you're joining from, and always want to get your comments, your questions throughout the show. That makes it more interesting. So, Anton, you want to open us up?
Good morning, everybody that's watching live, everybody that's tuning in later. But today we're going to talk about dieting or, some misconceptions around dieting. And just a reminder, why are we even talking about this, right? We haven't touched on a lot of health topics often as of late. We've talked about many other topics. But Human SOS is a humanly sustainable operating system, right? Whether it be for an individual or for organization, it's designed to help people thrive better in society and a workplace. And if you're not following our hashtag Human SOS, please do so. Help spread it. If you write content that's relevant to that, feel free to tag it. Me and Kevin will see it. Everybody in the community will see it, and interact with each other around it and just spread the word. But talking about dieting today, there's three pillars to Human SOS, right? There is our health pillar, there is our life pillar, and there is our work pillar. And each one of those has, four sub pillars that are important to it. And dieting is one of the, I should say nutrition is one of the dieting pillars. And that's one of the really, one of the misconceptions itself is that we have to diet to be healthy, right? And we have to nourish our body to be healthy. And it's just the number one mindset that I want the audience, to start thinking about today as we talk about this. Dieting signifies deprivation. It signifies reducing something, avoiding something, kind of a negative connotation on that. Nourishment is providing your body what it needs. And oftentimes we are not, in a bad state of health because we are dieting too much. We're in a bad state of health because we're not giving our body enough of what it needs. So that's just the very first thing I want to open up with today. Just think about it this way. How do you nourish your body? What do you do as audience here? We have a really great audience. I want to hear what you each do to nourish your body. What are the things that you focus on? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Somebody may say, I eat an apple a day. Cool. That's your thing. Somebody else may have other ideas. So Kev, how about you? What do you do to nourish your body?
Let me shout out our audience here, Rick and Zaid and Sina. Glad to have you. And so, to answer your question, over the years, Anton, I've had to learn about what my body needs. We make a certain assumption um, about food that we're told by various people, the AMA, all these people have the perfect diet for everybody. And so, what I had to learn is that, uh, our bodies differ, and I needed to find out what was healthy for me. And so, some just high level key things that I learned about me and for me is that, first of all, I need to focus on more on protein and green vegetables and low glycemic fruits. And that also, it's funny because my metabolism tends to be slow. But so the thought is eat less times. Well, what I also found out is I need to eat more times because the more times I eat throughout the day, my metabolism actually speeds up. And and then I also learned that I can't. It's not practical for me to do extreme diets. It's got to be something I got to live with, and if I can't live with it day to day and it become a part of my behaviors, then I'm wasting my time.
No, I like what you mentioned with extreme diets, and folks, I was a health coach for a really, really long time before, I do what I do now. And it started in my first way of helping humans. I thought that, being a health coach would be the best way to help human beings to live and thrive. Then I realized that health is not the only reason why human beings are not living and thriving well. Life and work are big components of that as well. But these extreme diets, now, can people be successful on them? Sure. I'm not saying they can't be. I'm not saying that they completely don't work in a sense of short term. Long term, they're not sustainable. And that's really the focus point of everything that we talk about, is that something that can become a regular part of your life. For majority of people out there, and notice the key word that I'm saying, majority, it's not feasible to eat, only meats. It's not feasible to eat only paleo and never having, anything processed. It's not feasible to, any of those kind of follow your blood type diet or some other crazy diet out there. I've been through so many in my life with clients and talked through them. What is feasible is setting some boundaries for yourself, some general guidelines, right? Kind of like what Kevin talked about. And then trying to stay within those guidelines 90% of the time, right? 10% applies in many ways. 10% doesn't always mean that, we're always perfect for those 10%. I mean, we're always using that to try to chase something. Sometimes we give ourselves a break for 10% of the time. Sometimes we say, you know what? If I got to go have some ice cream, I'm going to have some ice cream. If I got to have my birthday cake, I'm going to have my birthday cake. The point is limiting it to just 10 to that 10%. What oftentimes happens when we create diets and things like that, these perfect plans, we will have this sort of regiment for a little while and we burn ourselves out. We really deprive for so long, then the body wants it. So this is one of the misconceptions in the dieting world, is that, like Kevin said, you need this perfect thing. Somebody's got to sell you this idea of how to do it. Macros have become a big deal. Macros are like what Kevin talked about, proteins. How much protein should I have per day? How much carbohydrates should I have per day? How much fat I should have per day? And some guru out there says, okay, these are the percentages you need for your body. And I'm like, okay, if they're a professional athlete, maybe, the whole point there is like, where is the room for improvement? And I talk about this a lot. Imagine if you're lifting weights. If anybody's here ever lifted weights or did any sort of like a physical strenuous activity, you didn't walk in on day one and try to do the thing that you're trying to do on day 30 or day 50 or day 100. You didn't. You simply could have gotten hurt. Something bad could have happened. You progressed. You started small, then you challenged more and more and more. Kevin, I remember when you were training for your test that you were doing, I think it was last year, when you had to do the hike with a backpack. Then you progressed and you did more and more and more, making sure your body can do it, make sure your body progress. Otherwise, you get so sore or so painful you can't continue. Well, the same thing with a diet. You don't walk in on day one and have this perfect regimen outline and expect that it's going to work. For some reason in real life, we understand that concept. But when it comes down to dieting, it goes out the window. It's like, okay, Monday, I'm perfect. I got this list of 100 different things I'm going to do, and I'm going to be on point. And maybe you will be for a little bit. Maybe you're one of those few people that is going to sustain it for maybe a couple months, maybe a few months. But eventually, at some point, you're going to crash off that diet and you're going to crash hard. And that's why it's not sustainable. It's better just to operate 90% within the guidelines that you've set for yourself that are specific to who you are as a person, that fit your lifestyle, that fit your body, fit your goals. And then 10% of the time, give yourself a break.
Yeah. And Anton, something just occurred to me. If whatever you're trying to do from a nutrition standpoint takes a majority of your focus and energy to maintain it, then you need to avoid it. And Anton, because if it takes that much energy, that much focus for you to be able to sustain it, you will run out of steam quickly. That's I know one of the popular ones is counting. I believe that's a Weight Watchers thing, counting. Okay. And some people, it works. And I appreciate that. But if your whole focus and function becomes counting everything, there'll be a point you're going to get tired of counting. And, nutrition should be a natural flow for us, whatever that looks like. And it is different with each of us. and we need to recognize that. People that tell you they've got the magic formula, the bet. Correct me if I'm wrong. See, as far as observation, Anton, but I see that those things usually work for about 30% of the people, or thereabouts at best. And so, if people tell you they've got that one magic formula, look at it with a lot of skepticism.
And nutrition industry shifted a lot over the years, since early 2000s when I kind of got into it. And it's become more about flexibility and things like that. But it's new ways that people are finding to sell something. And, ultimately, if you want to lose some weight, you do have to be in a caloric deficit. You have to, here's the thing. You have to consume less calories than you expand. Than you use, right, throughout the day. There's two sides to that equation, though, right? That's what many people forget to focus on. We need to not just focus on eating less, we need to focus on burning more and teaching our body how to burn more at rest. That right there. If you can teach your body how to burn more calories while you're sitting there, while you're sleeping, while you're doing all those things, that's the long-term sustainable thing to do. So, for example, I'll give you guys a high level thing, a little science here, but your body consumes 5 calories for every liter of oxygen that you consume, right? So whenever you breathe in and you consume 1 liter of oxygen, you burn 5 calories. Now, if you are cardiovascularly out of shape and you don't take care of your body, you don't go on hikes, you don't, do whatever it is that you do for yourself on a regular basis, your body just doesn't consume as much oxygen. So being in a better cardiovascular shape long term will help you to burn more calories throughout the day, which gives you a little bit more wiggle room with what you can eat until you go into a surplus and you start gaining weight. The other thing is muscle. Muscle consumes more oxygen. So when you add, a pound of muscle, pure muscle to your body, if that's something you're focused on, you're going to consume about 50 calories more per day at rest. Right. So doing absolutely nothing, laying in bed, your body's going to burn 50 calories more per day because it's sustaining that muscle. So there's many little things like that. But the point is focus on, and this applies to everything, not just diet. It applies to change in general. We change as human beings better when we chase something positive than when we run away from something negative. That's just the truth. It's a better psychological approach. So instead of depriving yourself of those things, right, I tend to focus with clients on increasing your expenditure, chasing the positive, because it has so many other good things. Because the opposite of that is depriving your body of so much, now it's malnourished. I've seen this happen so many times. I remember there was a popular diet that was called the HCG diet. And it was a shot that people took that basically suppressed a specific hormone. I think it was ghrelin, and it made them not hungry. So these people ate 500 calorie diets, and yeah, they lost weight in the beginning, but they don't see all the cellular damage, all the big picture stuff that was happening to the body to achieve this crazy goal that didn't end up being sustainable in the long run because their body went back. Your body likes a state of homeostasis. If you don't know this, it's just how it's life, and it wants to remain the same. And it can only gradually change. If you do this big leaps and bounds, it will leap and bound right back to where it was. So, that's not what we want to do. We got a comment here from Zaid. Yeah, there you go. My biggest issues with stress. I wonder if it falls under which of the pillars, because it sounds it can be under each one of them. Absolutely, Zaid. And that's the whole point. When we talk about the stress assessment that we do, it includes all 3 of the pillars in it. You have stress that's coming from your health side of things, you have stress that's coming from life side of things, and you have stress coming from work side of things. And an easy way that we talk about it is it's not even those 3 like labels, but it's health is how we are, then life is what we are, and work is what we do. Right. And that's a very simple way of looking at those things. And every one of those things, stress comes from and stress impacts. It's kind of a vicious cycle that we get into. And nutrition is one of them, right? Like, you hear me talk about this all the time. Thoughts create chemicals and chemicals create thoughts. Well, guess what? Nutrition creates chemicals. So that can impact everything and anything from your productivity at work to your relationships at home, to your relationships at work, to your ability to focus. we're not just talking about, a little bit, a few inches on the waistline or something like that. That's not what it's all about. It's that it touches everything. That's this thing. It impacts everything. Now, vice versa. If you're stressed from work because you have a bad boss, guess what? Your ability to eat better diminishes, because when you're under stress, your body wants simple nutrients. Your body wants something that will give it immediate energy. And this is an important concept to get about stress. It's like when you're under chronic stress, it's like a lion is always chasing you. It's always after you. Your brain is thinking like it's trying to get away from a lion at all times. Well, then it wants to take a carbohydrate, which is a single chain molecule, break one bond and make immediate energy, versus a complex fat or protein or something like that, that it's going to take time to break down and make energy. Well, when you deplete those carbohydrates, which is your very limited storage in your body wants more and more and more of them. And that's what we want, junk food. That's when we want those simple breads and pastas, very simple carbohydrates. Your body can get energy back. So by having a bad boss at work, we're actually impacting our waistline because we're eating poorly, because that's what our body's actually craving and demanding in that moment.
Yeah, it's the intertwined nature of all aspects of our person, okay, is incredible. And as Zaid's kind of identified, those are all interactive. And as a result, we need to be aware of a holistic approach to health. And stress will definitely affect diet all the way. And Anton, I wanted to kind of focus in on something that you mentioned, and that was getting your body to burn calories even when you are at rest. And I think that's something that a lot of us miss. And each of us has a something that can help do those things. And you mentioned, of course, building muscle and cardiovascular. And then something for me, I mentioned it earlier, kind of, but I didn't focus in on eating patterns. Okay. If I change my eating pattern to having something throughout the day, more, in fact, rather than 3 meals a day, the theory is 6 meals a day. But if I just go for short periods and have some healthy something to eat on a regular basis throughout the day, my metabolism really gets more in line with what life is about. Because if I don't do that, I can go skip meals and things like that from a feeling of hunger. And we should base our eating on hunger. And if we are not hungry on a periodic basis throughout the day, we say, oh, well, that's easy because I can just skip meals. No, that's not healthy. That's something that if I do not make good choices for myself nutritionally, I will tend to skip meals and the like. And people think, oh, well, that's a good thing. No, that's not a good thing. The body needs energy on a periodic basis, and that period varies a bit with each individual. But when I learn the pattern that's healthy for me and I do it, then I actually increase my metabolism, and I am, even at rest, burning calories. And to put it in economic terms, it's sort of like passive income for our bodies, passive. That way we don't always feel like we got to be in the gym all day, every day. Mm-hmm. And so paying attention, learning about ourselves, it's funny, we keep coming back to this in all areas, stress, anything else. We've got to be intentional. We've got to be aware of ourselves. And this is another case where that's true. Learning about ourselves and the nutrition and health of our bodies, and then paying attention and taking action based on that can be remarkably good and make a huge difference in our health and well-being.
Absolutely. And I love how you just said passive income. That's such a good term. If I ever talk to finance people or people that are really into money and I teach them health, like I gotta use that. Because I think that resonates so well. Is how do you make your body work for you while you're not focusing on your body working to do the thing that you're trying to do? And that's spot on. We're talking about basal metabolic rate, rested metabolic rate, whatever you want to talk about, call it. It's what does your body burn at rest if you did absolutely nothing all day long? Believe it or not, majority of your calories burnt throughout the day comes from that number, right? We're looking at somewhere between 1,200 and 2,400 calories for an average human being, depending on the person's size, activity, like all the different things that we discussed. But just something that, I want to point out, like, I'm sitting here and I'm don't get me wrong. I'm not mad at our audience. Like I love you guys. It's just not a comfortable conversation for most people to have. I'm looking at the number of no time we go into health stuff, always going to be less. It's just how it is. I think we deal with a lot of guilt as people and we don't feel comfortable talking about it. I think our society has shamed us into thinking that we have to be a certain way or that we're failures, and it's tough. And that's why I like having these conversations, because saying, you know what, it's okay. Like if you ask majority of people on the street, how are you doing with your nutrition, no matter how good they are with it, they're going to feel like they're struggling. And it's just like, it connects into so many things, but we need to normalize these conversations and make them better, because it connects into anything and everything. Your mental health, if you don't think it has anything to do with nutrition, do some research. You're going to see how much stuff it connects into it, because like I said, it creates the chemicals in our body that support our system. The other thing is nutrition gives our nutrition is going to impact our digestion. That's another huge thing. And I'm not just talking about specifically giving the building blocks for our body to do what it needs to do. It's going to impact our digestion from a standpoint that it's going to destroy it. It's going to hurt that very fragile membrane that exists inside of our gut system that is responsible for keeping bad stuff out. And when that bad stuff starts to seep into the bloodstream, we have autoimmune responses, right? We have things like arthritis. We have things like Hashimoto's. We have things like, you name an autoimmune response, I'm probably going to help you connect it back to your gut health. And a lot of times when people come to me and they have a list of these issues, I've done a lot of like blood work with people and work on things like that, even though I'm not necessarily like a doctor, but in the holistic world, there's ways of doing that without overstepping your boundaries, because somebody else assesses it and I just kind of provide their action plan. And they're like, well, where do I start? Right? Like to Zaid's per point with stress. Most people that are under stress have a digestive problem. If you've been under severe stress for a long time, chances are gassiness, bloatiness, indigestion, inconsistent bowel movements, all those kind of things happen because your body is just not functioning properly, whether it be stress, doesn't matter where the stress came from, doesn't matter which of the three pillars, that's what the system's going to do. And then all of a sudden we start to have mental health problems. Why? I mentioned it on a couple episodes ago. 80% of our happy hormone is made in our gut. And when our gut is impacted, that's going to happen. So eating a lot of processed and junk food and stuff like that, that's going to do that. So healing your gut is usually the first thing I tell those people. I'm like, you got a list of issues? Great. Focus on this one. Let's get your gut and your digestion a lot better. And you're going to see how much easier everything else becomes.
Anton, I think the reason that people don't like to talk about it is kind of another topic that can shut down a room of conversation real quick is start talking about dying and life insurance, and things will go quiet real quick. And I think that's because so many of us feel guilt. We don't fit some norm, some box. Zaid mentions that we have boxes, and I think most of us have a box somewhere that we don't fit into, and diet, nutrition is one of those areas. And when you start getting into it, people think, well, I'm going to have to admit that I don't have this figured out. And so we look, that's when it's like being in class. If you're not prepared for class, you start looking down at the floor because you don't want to catch the teacher's eye for fear that they might ask you a question. I think when we start talking about nutrition and diet, that's what happens to a lot of people. They start looking at the ground and avoiding the concept and avoiding the conversation. But like you said, we've got to do it. If we don't, we're going to miss one of the key components in dealing with stress, in overcoming stress, and being healthy in general. Welcome, Jeremy. Good to see you, my friend. Been a while since we've seen you. I know you've been busy on a project, but glad to see you here. So, yeah, I think you start talking about diet and nutrition, and especially when you go, okay, don't tell me about the latest crash diet you're on. People go, uh-oh, I don't have much to talk about that I can be proud of. And so we get quiet on it.
And I love what you said there. I don't have much to talk about to be proud of, right? Like, I want everybody right now just to pause and disconnect from this conversation for a moment and internalize this and ask yourself, how do I feel about my nutrition, my state of nutrition? Do I feel good about it, or do I feel guilty about it? Do I feel like I'm just focusing on how much better I can do and where I'm going bad, and it's just a very negative association? Folks, it's the real thing that we're faced with all the time. Our society's been sliding nutritionally for a long time. We are worse, way worse than before, because the way that we're talking about is not inclusive. It's very exclusive. It's very much these boxes. It's very much about like shaming people into being better and all this kind of stuff. But I want you to start in a way that makes you feel good about it. Like, I just want you to do something this week that you can look back and go, you know what? I kicked butt. That was awesome. Like, it's not about being perfect, right? Everything we talk about with 10%, it's about being better. And there is a very big gap between being perfect and being better, but there's also a very big gap between where we are right now and simply being better, right? And instead of celebrating how far we have yet to go, focusing on that negative, celebrate how far you have come. Whatever the small change is, whatever the smallest implementation you can do that. There's so many, there's literally like probably 1,000 different things we can write down on a list right now that any one of us can commit to. Just commit to one. And then what happens is when you start to shift your mindset around what this nutrition thing is, and you start feeling good about it instead of constantly feeling like a failure, the times when it comes around and you go, okay, I've been making poor choices all the time, but I've actually been good. It's easier to make a good choice at that point because you're like, I'm capable, I'm able to do this. Versus when we get into this blame cycle and we focus on how terrible we're doing, it's like, I've been bad. What's it going to hurt just staying there? I'm never going to get out of this, situation I'm in. I'm never going to be good, one of the good ones, whatever it may be. So, just remember, like, I like whenever audience mentions God, we're all equal on this earth. Like we in his eyes, we're all equal, and he's given you strength that you may not have. You just have to unlock it. But there's tricks to it that to be able to get there. And that's not doing what society makes us feel like we should do. Start this long list of changes on Monday, on the first of the month, on New Year's, whatever it may be, and simply just be a little bit better every day.
Welcome, Wendy. And yeah, thanks for the comment. One of the stressors that a lot of us ignore is that we don't have value. And Anton's kind of sharing some different concepts of that somehow we don't have value. So how in the world can we possibly get any better? We failed already, and why try because I've failed. But at the end of the day, and goes to Wendy's comment about being made in God's image, and as part of that understanding is that creation is our value is remarkable. I mean, we're priceless in terms of being created in God's image, and as a result, we don't have to prove our value anymore. Now what we do is we focus on growing into who we are, what we are, including our nutrition. And also a misnomer, I think, that drives our nutrition element, Anton, is the images of the perfect physical body. Okay, folks, I've been around a long time, and I know a lot of people, and I can tell you there is no perfect physical specimen out there. And by the way, those that quite often we hold up as perfect physical specimens are usually wrecked mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Not saying always, okay, but quite often. And funny thing about it is they are so insecure about their looks, even though most of us would go, oh, wow, I want to look like that. No, you don't want to look like that. You want to look like you being healthy in all regards, including nutrition. And, and so, yeah, a little step. Okay, a little change that you understand can be a factor. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. One of the changes that I learned, and again, this is about becoming aware and staying aware. Low glycemic fruits. Up until a point, I had no idea. I thought fruit, you know, and we're told that all fruits are healthy, and they can be. But for me, if I focus on eating bananas all the time, then that is would be unhealthy for me because that's a high glycemic fruit. And so learning those things can help us have successes. So when I choose to eat a low glycemic fruit like berries typically are a low glycemic fruit. When I choose that over um, some of the melons, because melons quite often are high glycemic fruit, when I make that choice, I can go, yeah, that was a pretty good thing. I can do this. I have made a step and a good choice. And not only that, it's become a part of my behaviors. And that's a small step that can pay off big results, if nothing else, letting me know that I can be successful in choosing ways to be healthier, including, like we talked about, that passive income of calorie burning. So just they're all connected, and we keep talking about this, that if you focus in on one pillar, one area of your life only, you're going to never be healthy. It's got to be a holistic approach. I guarantee it. You can eat all the right foods, do all the right exercise, but if you're mentally and spiritually unhealthy, your body is going to become unhealthy in spite of your efforts to do the right eating and right exercise. I guarantee it. I've watched it. I've watched people that, we say, oh, well, be, good body mass index and all the exercise and you'll live forever, so to speak. But I've had friends that were the appearance of health fall over with heart attack. And it's because they did not deal with core health. And typically it's related to not dealing with stress.
Honestly, health of all health types is all going to focus on this one thing. And whether it be your mental health, whether it be your physical health, whether it be your nutritional health, your cellular health, your physiological health, you name it, there's so many different types of health that we like to spread out and focus on. It's about one word that we talk about all the time. It's that B word that, we don't do enough of. It's not the B word you're thinking about. It's balance. But we over index, right? And trust me, I've trained probably thousands of people in my life when it comes down to health. I know it's not probably, it's thousands of people in my life. And I've seen so many over index. We over index on that physical appearance. Guess what? Now we're hurting our mental health because we are so preoccupied with what we see in the mirror. And now that's taken us away from what's inside our heads. And now it's constant pressure and it's constant expectations. Once I have a six pack, now I always got to have a six pack. Folks, it is not easy to walk around with a six pack. It takes an incredible amount of dedication unless you're just gifted, blessed by genetics. And even that in your later years are going to disappear. So it's about balance. It's about taking all those things and staying balanced with it, whether it be through nutrition, whether it be through something else. And, these physical specimens that we glorify, these bodybuilders, depends on if they're the big bodybuilders or more the fit bodybuilders. They're some of the most unhealthiest people out there. Trust me, because I've seen their blood works. I used to run their blood works and see what it looks like on the inside, and their hormones are messed up. There are all sorts of issues going on with their bodies because they have to overdo things to get to that kind of level. They fixated on just one thing, and don't get me wrong, tremendous amount of work to make it be that way. Like, so much work, so much dedication. But guess what? Now they're spending 3 hours in the gym a day, probably neglecting some other components of their life. They maybe not giving their parent, their kids as much time. Maybe they're not giving their partner as much time. Maybe they're not giving their education, their job, like you name it. The point is, it's about being balanced, and nutrition is not any different. We've talked about that, giving ourselves a wiggle room of 10%. To be okay with a bad choice sometimes. And that brings up, Zaid's comments around choices. Once we identify, maybe the focus on the ability to make, I'll just read the first one. Maybe the focus on the ability to make a choice, let that be the cue. I can make a choice. You're a human being. Yeah, that's the thing. Your body doesn't control you. You control it. But sometimes we feel like I am incapable of making that choice because you've made so many bad choices. But the next part, once we identify the cue, then we can shift the choice. The strength and weight should be on the cue, right? Like, this makes me think of triggers, right? Like, it's just the fundamental behavior shifts is if you have a trigger that makes you eat a bad food, you can't just take away the response of eating that bad food without identifying the trigger and replacing the response. Either get rid of the trigger if you can, which not always is the case. What is triggering me to go to the fridge to eat this ice cream, right? Maybe it's an emotional response that's been conditioned into your life. Folks, the cards are stacked against us when it comes down to nutrition from our childhood, right? Just look back and think about it. When you did something good as a kid, what did you do? You celebrated with ice cream. You celebrated with comfort foods. And if you don't think that's conditioned in your head from a very early age, wrong. Now, vice versa. If something bad happened, what did you do? You ate some comfort foods to make yourself feel better, right? Grandma or mom or dad or whoever baked you a cake to make you feel better, gave you some cookies to make you feel better, right? All that kind of stuff is still ingrained deep in your head. You have to change your relationship with food. You have to become aware of that and say, okay, what kind of triggers are happening? Now, I'm telling you, if instead, and I know this is a crazy idea, but instead you treated yourself to the best meal that you love, right? To me, I love a big steak. Like, that's my thing. I love to go to a butcher shop and get myself like the nicest cut of meat I can get. What's that?
About this thick.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? You got like 2 inches thick, probably still the bone on it for extra flavor. But it takes time to cook. It takes time to put things into. But I'm gonna make some Brussels sprouts on the side. I'm going to maybe make some mashed potatoes, with all the fixings on it. And I make an experience out of it. It's not just about quickly going and shoving some cookies down my mouth and celebrating that way. Now it's an experience, usually with my family, usually, or even just with myself. But like, it's a process, and I enjoy the process just as much as I enjoy the outcome. And I've reconditioned. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not always the case. I don't not eat sugar. I do not eat cookies and cake. But I constantly I try to remind myself, if I'm eating this, why am I eating this? Sometimes I'm just bored and I'm trying to get my brain active. So I'm just trying to put a bunch of sugar in there because I'm an addict. We're all addicts when it comes down to sugar. So just try to identify what that trigger is and put a different response to it, because your body's conditioned to have certain responses.
Welcome, Rafia. And she likes steak too, apparently, Anton. Yeah, food, if we get, part of dieting is we get so focused on food that it creates so many other problems as a result. There's a principle called emotional focus. And one of the ways that I learned this the first time was when we say, I'll never be like my parents, or I'll never do that, focusing on our parents. And there is the principle of emotional focus is that if you make statements like that and do it with conviction, you're almost guaranteeing that you're going to be like your parents. You may not, it may not show up physically in the exact same fashion, but if nothing else, you're going to have the attitudes behind the behaviors. And in the same way, if we get emotionally focused on food, then we're going to have a problem with balance relative to nutrition, because food is not our focus. It's just part of what we do and who we are. And if we're having to give it so much thought, something is wrong with our nutrition. Nutrition should just be a byproduct of what we're about on a daily basis. And obviously, it needs to be healthy. And we have insights into, excuse me, what is healthy and what is not. But to start excluding things gives us emotional focus. You tell yourself, I can't eat that. And I guarantee you, everything in the world is going to look like that, whatever it is, and make it nearly impossible.
It comes back to like what I was saying. Don't run away from a negative. Chase a positive. So perfect example. Like if somebody's struggling, with eating a lot of processed carbohydrates, breads, sugars, sweet, salty, crunchy things and things like that. If I tell you stop eating it and you're going to tell yourself stop eating it, we want what we can't have. It's like Kevin said. I always talk about this. Like if anybody remembers their high school years and you had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that broke up with you, you may not even like them anymore. But the minute they broke up with you, it's like, oh my God, my life is over. Like, I can't believe this person is no longer accessible to me in that way. You didn't even like them anymore. But now because you can't have them, you want them. Well, the same thing happens with our food choices. So instead, chase protein, right? So one of the things that protein does is it stabilizes our blood sugar. Instead of it spiking and dropping like it does from simple nutrients, it's going to come up slow and drop slow. And by the time it drops below a level that makes us hungry, it's time to eat another snack or a meal or whatever it is that kind of rebalances it out and makes us feel a lot more normal. And, the other misconception about meat, we're talking about steak and things. Oh, meat's bad for you, like blah, blah. Now, the way that we raise our meat in the westernized world is bad because we shove it full of hormones. We try to reduce the cost as much as we can, and then we end up eating high quantity of it. If you buy good quality meat that is naturally raised the way that it was designed to be raised, you're not going to eat as much of it because that stuff's expensive. That's just the reality of it. Like, that's a naturally limiting factor in itself. So in moderation, it's not bad for you. It's actually really, really, really good for you. It has so many good things that your body needs, like carnitine, iron, that you can't really get very easily from other things. And that vegans have to supplement with other things in order to get enough through their diet. Now, if you're not eating meat because of a faith choice or because of just your personal choice, go for it. I support you. I love you for it. Just don't judge me for eating my steak. But if you're doing it because you think it's the healthiest thing out there, you're wrong. I'm just telling you, bottom line, I've done the research. I've talked to some of the smartest people in the world when it comes down to nutrition. Being a vegan is not better than being a clean meat eater with vegetable content on the side of it.
Yeah. This thing of everything's bad. Okay. And I will tell you that from experience that not everything is bad. Not everything is good. Part of what we have to consider is what is healthy for us. This 5 easy steps, 7 easy habits. I appreciate that we can learn from that. But if people tell you that's your answer to everything, then they are not being completely honest. We want, I'm always looking for the formula that I can plug in things to, and I figured out it's not happening. There are principles out there that guide us, certainly, but quit looking for that easy formula, that one way to do something that's going to make your life great, and really take time to consider your health as part of it, your nutrition, learn. And when we do that, we become a lot more free, even in our nutrition, even in our eating. And it's just such an important thing. Zaid shares, found that sometimes I want ice cream because something cold, replace it with cold water and a small piece of chocolate. Doesn't mean that I stopped eating ice cream totally, but I can play with my need. I have to watch over my options. Yeah, that's a key thing. Is you declare things off limit, you're going to get focused on wanting those things. Don't declare things off limits. Just consider, can I approach it in a more balanced, healthy fashion and pick one small thing, ice cream, some cold water, and a piece of chocolate. Better if it's dark chocolate, by the way. So the current thing is, antioxidants and so on. I'm just being funny here. Chocolate, do what you want to do. But anyway, small steps. Mm-hmm. Most diets that you go on that are prescribed, the latest, greatest diet, whatever it is. For me, years ago, it was the Atkins diet. And I literally did not consume a carbohydrate for 2 weeks in any shape, form, or fashion. And I lost weight, as you can well imagine. The problem was that this personal experience, I was at the end of what they call the introduction or induction phase. And I had finished that up. So it was time to introduce carbohydrates on a limited scope back into my diet. Well, it happened, the timing was such, we were celebrating completion of a class that I was helping teach. And part of the normal celebration was to have some cake. Like Anton said, we celebrate using cakes and cookies. And well, I thought, okay, well, I've done my initial phase according to this plan. And so I was going to allow myself a small piece of cake. And I took one bite of it and my head spun and I thought, I'm going into orbit. And it was just because I introduced not a good sugar, not a healthier sugar, some pure old refined white sugar in the form of cake. And my body just went crazy. And that's because I made choices that were extreme and were not healthy, even though I did lose weight. But ultimately, it wasn't sustainable. So a lot of different components in there that we have to consider. And if you're going extreme on any of it in nutrition, you're asking for trouble. Would you say that's pretty much guaranteed, Anton?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen it all the time. I've seen it too many times. I've seen people last for years, fall off the wagon so hard to erase everything and anything that they did in the process. Just the reality is sugar is bad for us. Bottom line, it is. But it's hard to be perfect. It's nearly impossible to be perfect. So, you can try sometimes like to do a challenge and eliminate sugar for 30 days. Now, it's not to be without sugar forever. It's always having in the back of your mind that you're going to come back to it, but it's to experience what good feels like, right? Like it's to see what is my body, my mind, when it's completely clear of this stimulating thing that I'm always after. Sugar is like cocaine to our brain. It's the same. The studies have been done where they actually measure the brain and it creates the same response, the same, pleasurable centers light up when we have it as when we have cocaine. And we know one is really bad. The other one, I can go across the street to my grocery store or to my anywhere, really everywhere I can get sugar. I can get sugar anywhere I go, even like stores that sell furniture. On the side aisle, I have sugar accessible there for some reason, right? Like it's just how it goes because we're addicted. So going without it for a little while with the idea that you will return to it, you will have an understanding of, wow, this is what my mind has become because I'm constantly over consuming this. Now, if you have it once in a while, it's not going to be the end of the world, but at least feel what good feels like.
And there are alternatives, healthier alternatives to pure white refined sugar. Am I correct in that, Anton?
Of course, yeah. No, there's lots of different ones out there. Stevia, different kind of fruit extract sugars and things like that. Just not as much processing like our typical, sugar cane and stuff like that. It's if it's super cheap, probably made in a plant that has a bunch of stuff in it that your body doesn't need inside of it. Like that's the reality of it. But yeah, I'm laughing at Zaid's comment. Anton and Kevin, you should start a college offering a degree in holistic life management. That's honestly what Human SOS is, a
It is.
holistic, a holistic life management system, whether it be for work, personal life, or your, health. And that's what we're intending to do, holistic and sustainable, right?
Yep.
Because it's all encompassing. It's really taking to the bigger picture and saying, how do I balance all this, right? The word that we also use a lot is congruence. How do I make all these things coexist at the same time without, trying to move this? It's like spinning plates. That's what people imagine like we're doing in our life. It's not the right way because you always have to focus on one thing at a time. It's how do I design this thing to coexist together, right? How do I figure out with balance how to do it all at the same time? And you can because you have to. That's the reality. You can because you have to. Nowadays, we can't just say, okay, I'm only going to focus on work and let the other things fall apart. I'm only going to focus on health and let the other things fall apart. Life. So yeah, if you guys want this, that's what Kevin and I do. We're coaches, we're consultants. We want to go to organizations and teach companies how to do this. And it's in a very manageable way that is done 10% of change at a time. Very different approach than most. We say create small wins that become, small yet mighty steps. That's one of my favorite things to say. Something that's specific to each individual that comes with hyper customization. And we say, which area needs the most support and how do we integrate it into others?
Mm.
And then let's focus on those gradual progressions, whether it be health, which is our 10% fitter brand, whether it be life, which is our 10% better brand, or if it's work, it's 10% impact brand. Each one of them has an acronym that it stands for. Honestly, I haven't talked about this in a while. I don't remember what they are, but they exist.
And Jeremy makes a comment that is key. And too much of anything is unhealthy, even if it's known to be healthy. The same goes with our mindset and achieving our goals. There are people that will over-index on goal setting to a point that it'll destroy them because they will become so wrapped up and controlled by their goals that they forget the rest of their life. And so we just really have to watch going extreme in most anything. I am a huge proponent of wisdom and spiritual things, but you can over-index on that. If we're always seeking wisdom and focused very seriously on understanding, find out things, and as a result, we're not having fun and laughing, that's unhealthy. That becomes a big problem for us. So, in the last few minutes, Anton, let's talk about some tools and tips on nutrition that people can use, some practical things. Thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, one thing I already mentioned to avoid your sugar cravings, eat a high amount of fiber and a high amount of protein. Those are the things. Like you will see if I eat a bunch of fiber and I eat a bunch of protein with every meal, you're going to drastically reduce those things. If you are struggling with calories at night and you feel like you're overeating, you're really grabbing a bunch of snacks and things like that, chances are you didn't get enough calories throughout the day and your body's playing catch up. Your blood sugar was, not regulated. So it's good to start with low amount of those sugary things in the morning or low amount of like processed food in the morning and eat more natural foods in the higher quantities and structuring your meals backwards, having the biggest meal be in the morning, lunch, smaller meal, and dinner is the smallest meal. And not chase positives. Like I said, don't run away from negatives. In general, like if everybody's talking to you about macronutrient balance, right? How much protein you should eat per day, how much blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. It's not an exact science. Here's what I've used with clients for years and it works. You use your hand. That can estimate for you very easily how much of what something you should have. Your protein should be about a fist size, right? What your fist is, that's about how much protein you should eat. Your starches, your grains, things like that should be about a cup, your cupped hand worth of stuff. Your veggies, palm, right? Your fats, your thumb. Like, go by that. You don't have to overthink it. But what it will do is it will create, most importantly, the biggest advice I have for you, and a few comments were made about it, is become aware. Become aware what you do when you put it into your body. Become aware of the environment that you're in. Become aware of the emotions that you're having when you're doing it. Just understand why you do what you do. That's step number one. You can't change and become something new until you understand what you currently are and why you are what you are. So that's the biggest thing that I focus on over the years whenever I start working with people in nutrition, is journaling, or at least taking mental notes and understanding it, and sitting down and just actually eating a meal versus working and thinking about a million other things, and really focusing on that awareness.
Well, and you mentioned getting blood work, getting certain types of information from the status of your blood, and consult with Anton or someone that knows the types of panels to request. I mean, you can go to lab sites and pay fees without having to go to the doctor, but be careful. Make sure that you get assistance in interpreting the results from somebody that understands them. Mm-hmm. Don't just go willy-nilly. There are other tools out there that help you. I know one that helped me, that is one of the more balanced approaches, is there is an assessment by a group called Provita, and it's a body typing assessment. And they don't have the end-all send-all, but it certainly is pieces of information to help you assess. And one of the key things, and I go back to disconnect and disconnect. Okay, get away from what's distracting you from understanding your nutrition. Second thing, observe what's going on with me when I eat this way or do that or whatever. And then last, seek out some wisdom about it. Find out what you can about what you observe. When you do that, whether it in any area, including health and nutrition, you learn about you. And I will tell you another little tool that is helpful is they're called genograms. Okay. And genogram is where you look at your family and look back in your family tree and try to learn not just the names and birth dates of folks. What were they like? And how did they eat? And things like that. And when you can learn some of those patterns, it's going to give you insight into yourself. But it takes time and it takes some commitment to do this. And once you begin to do this and have awareness of yourself individually, you can start making wise choices in your nutrition area. And then observe your own patterns. What are you attracted to nutritionally? Okay. Sometimes it's because you've got your body out of whack, but sometimes it's because that's the way you are genetically. And if that's the way you are genetically, and you just say, I'm going to stop doing X, you are setting yourself up for failure and being unhealthy. So just sorry, no easy answers, no formula. If you guys come find that formula, let me know. I'm always looking for a good formula, but at this point in my life, we don't live on formulas. We live on principles. And when we apply the principles, then we have a great chance to be healthy and live abundantly. So thank you. Go ahead, Anton.
I just want to thank the audience for engaging on this tough topic. And it just makes me so happy to see that, you folks feel like it's a safe space. I think that Kevin and I have tried really hard to create an environment that's a safe space. There's no, thing that you can say that you'd be judged for, or question you could ask that you could be judged for. Like I said, whenever we talk nutrition, typically, or health, we don't get a lot of engagement. You guys have done a great job. Ladies have done a great job. engaging with us, and I appreciate that. And Kevin and I will do a better job with talking about this. Maybe we'll kind of rotate across 3 pillars that we talk about, with 1 week being health, 1 week being life, and 1 week being kind of work stuff, because they're all important. We tend to over-index on things that we feel people are engaging with, but we will do better, because I think with time, more and more people will become engaged with this. Thanks so much.
And hey, Anton is one of the smartest people I know on health, and I can tell you he's not perfect either, and neither am I. We're here just to share out of our life. So don't ever feel like you're in a place where you can't share without condemnation, because I know well enough in anything in my life, saved by the grace of God, there go I. And I've been forgiven, and I like to focus on forgiving others and acceptance. So thank you, everyone, and appreciate you guys being here. God bless. Have an amazing week. We'll see you back next week, Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock. Take care.
Bye.